There we go. We are recording. So I'm here with Jorge, otherwise known as Tyclone.
Mhm.
And yeah, he's got a whole presentation ready to explain who he is. So I'll let you get right to it.
Yeah, and it is spelled Jorge. I go by George generally, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's spelled Jorge. It's a little weird for
I'm sorry
sure.
about that.
Um, no, all good. It's definitely spelled that way, so I get that a ton.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you must get that all the time.
um,
Yeah.
no, but it's fine. So yeah, that's my name, I guess. I guess I thought I'd start with like some of the games that I've played because that would kind of show how I kind of got interested in games in the first place. And so I kind of unusually got into like hobby board gaming because normally diplomacy is not what you think of as like an entry level game, but this was one that my eighth grade teacher was like really obsessed with, and so he had us play in class basically, and
Mhm.
that's kind of where I like kind of discovered, oh wow, there's like all these board games out there, and so diplomacy was like a lot of fun for me, and I ended up going to a bunch of tournaments for it. So that was kind of what some of these pictures are actually at university. I was basically hosting some games with like classmates, and then I had a convention where I invited people to participate in this basically tournament for this game.
Mhm.
Um, and I even turned it into a source of income. They did like a really small study basically, so I participated in that.
Ah,
Uh,
gotcha.
yeah,
What was the study about?
yeah, they were trying to see if they could create an AI that could beat humans at diplomacy, and they did. But there were some special conditions. You wouldn't allow you to do any press because at this stage, the AI hadn't gotten the ability to send messages yet. So it was nobody could send any press, and so it was more like a chess game almost. And the AI did really, really well. But I just read a study that came out like I think this week where they finally figured out how to get the AI to like send messages, and that's been doing well. So I'm sure the AI will catch up
We'll
really
get there.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They always do, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
But actually, just to describe the game really quickly, for those not familiar with it, it is a kind of World War One setting, but really it's just like an asymmetric game where everyone plays one of the seven major powers in World War One, and you kind of negotiate as the main mechanic. So the pieces all have the same strength, and that's one of the interesting things. Unlike some other war games, they have like dice and like these tables, but here every unit always has the same strength. So if you both move to the same place, neither gets in, and that's why you're almost always forced to work with somebody who has to issue an order called a support order to actually make any progress. So it's very negotiation heavy because you normally need like an ally to work with you. And what I think is really interesting is how obviously you can go back on your promises, and so it creates this weird dynamic where you need to work with people, but you have like a ton of incentive to betray people too. So it's like this really weird thing that's going on here where it's like required that you work with somebody. You can't win otherwise, but you are gonna risk working with people.
Right. Yeah. Anytime you get into those social games, you get the two sides of that, helping people out and the backstabbers, right? And then when I used to play these type of games, I don't have a big group right to play with anymore. But when I was growing up, I used to be the one who some gamers don't appreciate me. I would be the wild, like I wouldn't have a strategy. I would just play completely, the jackal or whatever. And I'd like doing that because it threw people off. So yeah.
No, that can be really fun. And one of the other things that's really nice about the game is there are like seven different countries and they all play very differently. So I think that kind of play style really works well as Italy. And I like doing that as Italy for sure. Because the thing is, like, at least in the beginning of the game, you're in a very defensive position. And so, like, if you just like move around randomly and like like screw with people, they can't really attack you back that effectively until maybe later in the game. So you have like this free like pass basically to like mess with people.
Right. I like that.
Yeah, it
Cool.
sounds
So
like maybe
what's
style.
yeah, so that so this game got you into it because so did you have obviously you had people to play with and you did you have people to play with beforehand or did you create this convention to find people to play with it outside of the school setting? Because I know you found it in school first. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky to be located like near Chicago, and there is a huge group of people who play diplomacy like face to face in Chicago. But especially like over the pandemic, their online diplomacy has gotten really popular, and so there's a bunch of websites to just play online diplomacy. And instead of talking to people, you would send like emails.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, that's a nice. It's yeah. I haven't talked to anybody yet who their origin story involved a teacher introducing them to a complicated board game. So that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Then I guess, yeah. Like, I guess it kind of goes to show that gateway games exist, and they can bring people into the hobby, but I guess like they're not necessarily the only starting point. I definitely know a lot of people who like either their first game that they played was like diplomacy or like they like were thrown into the deep end and that actually like encouraged them to find more stuff. And then like moved on to like simpler games from that. So it can go like both ways.
Right, but you probably need someone. The difference is a gateway game maybe you could discover on your own, while a deeper game like this you need someone to hold your hand through it, the experience.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, great point. For sure. Yeah, I can't imagine trying to learn the rules on your own and trying to get people to yeah for sure.
Yeah, I mean I'm sure people have, but that can't be the typical way.
All right, well, I guess that's that the other kind of, I guess this is more of a genre, but I play a lot of collectible card games. So and the one I mainly play is Shadow Era. And like by now I do help out a little bit on their design side, but I also won the World Championships in 2020. So I had been playing competitively for several years, and then this is kind of like the deck, and it was it was like it's a digital card game. So basically you can play like on your phone or on your computer. And so I like played a lot of this game basically.
Okay.
I recently got into this card game called Universus. It's another collectible card game that the idea is they take IPs from all these kind of different animes and just in general, and they make cards using the characters from them, and then they all can battle each other. And so you might have like a game between like someone from Street Fighter and someone from My Hero Academia. So that's kind of really neat. But actually, I really only play with the My Hero Academia cards, which is kind of like the latest set. So I've been getting into that lately just because I kind of wanted more of like a physical card game. And I don't know, I like the mechanics a lot. But then I've also played just like more like tried out, but I've played like a ton of other collectible card games. So I just really enjoy being able to build your own deck and then like take it into a match and kind of experiment with different decks. And then also deck builders like the Minion, and then the other ones are like video games actually. So Slay the Spire, Monster Train are two games that I really enjoy that are like single player actually video games that let you build a deck.
Cool. So I'm curious now about your competitive side, because so how do you like I have never been into this world of competitive of gaming. So how does that differ for you between like, so do you like, obviously you must practice and train for that, but like, how does that differ for you between like playing a game for enjoyment and playing a game for being a world champion, you know?
Right. Well, one thing about Shadow Era is it is a much smaller game than say like Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic the Gathering. So I guess I basically like played it mostly for fun. And so and most of the people at the World Championships are playing it, for fun and not as like a living or anything. So like the prize money was like, I don't know, $2,000, which is really, really nice, but obviously, not like something that you would do professionally. So yeah, it was mostly for fun. And so I guess in training would just be playing the game online and just trying out different decks and just playing a lot. And they also had a lot of player organized tournaments that were also just for fun. And I did a lot of those. And I guess that was like kind of like fun, but also the training there.
So you don't like you don't sit through like you don't like have a spreadsheet of all the effects of cards and try and find out the best strikes that way. You just learned it by playing it a bunch.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if that was an approach that some people did,
I think that might be a thing for like, if like it's Magic the Gathering, for example, and like the prize money is like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, then I'm sure there are people who are gonna, probably one of the most important things with like the competitive card games in general is matchups. So if you have a deck and has a weakness to like another deck that you might see in the tournament, they could like knock you out, and then you like, basically are out of the tournament. So one thing you want to make sure of is that all your matchups like are okay, and you might put in cards into your deck that aren't good for your strategy, but kind of help you in what are called your bad matchups. And so that definitely where you have like those huge spreadsheets, I could see that being a huge thing when you're trying to calculate matchups, especially if like there's a lot more on the line.
Gotcha. I didn't know if that was a real thing. I was just, that's what I envision when I hear someone that's training for like for something like this,
Mm-hmm.
But that's, so you would make your deck different versus when you're playing with just your friends versus a tournament, because you might have to dilute your deck down for a tournament to try and go against lots of different things, while with your friends you just want to play what you think is cool. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that I also, one thing about collectible card games in general is it also kind of lets you be a designer in a way where you're kind of assembling your own deck. So I think that's a lot of what appeals to me about it is being able to like kind of have so much influence over how the game is played.
It's interesting. I've never thought about like deck building and collectible cards like that. Yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah.
And then the bottom photo is actually, I attempted to make a collectible card game. It's not very balanced because the whole gimmick is that the cards are randomly generated. So even the artwork has like a background image and then like the monster and then something else. And like then what happens is each kind of background or foreground or monster is correlated with either some kind of effect or some kind of attack value or something. And then if it's better, it like increases the cost of the card. But it definitely gets really wacky. So it's not very balanced. It was more like, Keyforge does something very similar where the cards are assembled. The deck is assembled by an AI, but here the cards are themselves are assembled by an AI, and it has definitely resulted in some really weird things. But
that sounds interesting.
It's aptly named Bizarre World. It's very bizarre.
Gotcha. And is the idea behind that one that like anytime a player would go to play, they would go into the system and it would generate the cards for them, or you just get a generated card deck that's random?
Let me actually okay, so it's over here, and so you can make your own card, I guess. So you could make this.
Okay, so you do it yourself. Yeah.
It was not legal for being too powerful. Okay, like basically, you can make your own card, or if you want randoms, you can just randomly get them. And so like one example is Recyclable Eraser of Capitalism. That is one card in the game that like the capitalism would correspond, I think, to the fact that it's like its cost is 2 resources to activate the effect, and basically kind of like the idea is you have resources to play the cards, like in Magic the Gathering and other games, and then the monsters themselves are also resources. So capitalism makes it worth 2 resources instead of just 1 resource. And so that would be a good effect, and that would increase the cost of the card, basically.
Gotcha. See, I knew there would be spreadsheets somewhere in this conversation.
Yep. So yeah, I really like the genre generally of deck building, and so or collectible card games. So this is kind of like my attempt to like make my own, because one of the issues with, I think, making a collectible card game also is the fact that you have to just design so many different cards. And so I think like this way, I only really designed 10 creatures, backgrounds, and foregrounds, but then that can make 1,000 different cards. So it is like a lot more efficient.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like the like the AI art that a lot of people are using for games now. Like you can put in all those things and choose what you want. Maybe is this what you're thinking about with this game? Maybe like you could create all these cards and then you're like, oh, these cards are good, and then you could collect the ones that come out that are good. Especially since you played so many collectible card games, maybe you're stuck in the ruts of the genre so much. Like sounds like an interesting way to get out of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the really amazing things about like, well, I guess my AI is like a lot dumber than it's more like Mad Libs than like the AIs that are making art. But still, I think, yeah, you can kind of like accidentally find things that are really cool. And it's the same with like AI art. And that's like one of the, I think, great applications of it is you can just like try until like something good happens. And so with AI art, like in my experience, like, I don't know, 4 out of 5 artworks are like probably there's something wrong with them, or like very wrong with them sometimes.
Yeah.
And then you can just throw those out because like you just have to click a button and then like you can make 5 more.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like a cool way. I like it.
Okay, then the last one I have here is puzzles. I guess puzzles aren't really games, but they're very related, I would say. And so, okay, this one on the left here is from like the Cryptex Hunt. So that's like a puzzle hunt that happens online that I really, really enjoy. And it's kind of like escape room puzzles. So, but you do it online. So that's kind of cool how you can kind of compete with other people also doing the hunt at the same time as you. And so what's really fun about it, and what I really like about the Cryptex Hunt, is that it's very like beginner oriented. So like there's always those people who are so good at puzzles, they like finish in an hour or whatever. And then they kind of come back and help out and give hints to everybody who is still going through the puzzles. So and they always do something really fun. So this year, like, okay, well, I actually forget which year this was, but the puzzle was like a book, or the puzzle hunt was a book. And like you would, I don't know, read the book to like find the puzzles or something. So yeah, they do like interesting stuff like that.
So they send out physical materials to you and then you do it online. Okay. Yeah. Cause last year for Christmas, my sister gave me like an escape room package, and like it came with materials, but then like there are web pages we had to go to find out more of the clues. So it sounds like it's a similar type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes they just do like stuff that doesn't need any physical materials too. So it just depends on the year for sure.
Gotcha. Cool.
Okay, the middle one is kind of a puzzle I made. It's really like too difficult is what I've heard. I've tried it, but I guess yeah, around the same time that I was like really into puzzle hunts, I made this puzzle based off of well, there's this thing called a moon meter that my high school had, and the idea was that when you would come into class, you would kind of take a pin and put it on the emotion you were feeling. And so there were a lot of so blue would be like sad, and red would be like angry, and like you would often see like how people were feeling, and it did tend to gravitate towards like blue, but that's just
high school settings. Yeah, high school. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess this is kind of not really making fun of it, but yeah, just a puzzle based off of that. And so I guess for puzzle design at least, and probably game design too, I just kind of take stuff from real life, like the mood meter, and then try and like play around with it. And then, so this puzzle is just kind of using that mood meter as like the inspiration for the puzzle. Um, and then I guess I don't really design that many puzzles. I think this is, and like maybe a couple others I've designed, but yeah, I just enjoy kind of the games mostly. And then there are like a bunch of video games that are puzzle games that I really enjoy too. So those are like all the puzzle video games that I have on like Steam. And so there's like a lot of really good puzzle games that you can get. And yeah, basically that.
Nice. Portal is like the only game I got my wife to like play with me at the same time.
Yeah.
I used to love those Portal games. Yeah, they were great.
They're a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's puzzles basically. So
Yeah.
then I guess moving into kind of where I kind of got started in design is this
Sure.
next section. And so just to set up some background, like I guess in high school is where I started designing stuff, and really probably just my senior year of high school, because what happened was my friend and I, well, okay, they had a program called a senior project. And basically as a senior, you could, choose to, instead of taking a class, use that time to do basically anything, as long as at the end of the year you presented like a project, like this is what I worked on. And so because like you could do anything, my friend and I said, let's like design some games. And so yeah, we basically spent the year.
Why is everyone at your school so blue? This sounds like an awesome place to go.
Yeah, no, it was a great high school. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but I guess also people would just kind of make fun of the movie or two.
Of course, yes. Of
And
course.
so I think that was a large part of it. Yeah, it was a great place actually. But yeah, we spent the year. We found like this curriculum online from like MIT. They have like a course on tabletop game design, and so we like kind of watched those like the videos and kind of followed along with their curriculum as kind of like what we did in the class, and then also designed a couple of games. And so one of them was called Daggers High, and the idea was it was like a board game about being a high school student. So I basically took that kind of basic idea that we made. We basically designed the full game. It kind of was playable. And then I took it and took a gap year to basically make a board game out of it and try and put it on Kickstarter. So that was kind of my first real dip into trying to like self-publish something. It didn't work out, but I actually think what was really nice about it is it kind of got me really into kind of design in general. So and I learned like a ton about kind of, I think, self-publishing and making games that like can actually be printed out and be playable. But yeah, okay, just to I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Just to describe the game a little bit, it's kind of a satire on high school. And so you have all these different stats. So there's friends, stress, happiness, integrity, and like basically it's a resource management game, but the resources are all kind of themed to high school. And you also have teacher influence and stats and grades. So okay, that on the left there is like the it's a kind of digital version of the game that's single player and kind of more along the lines of the original design. And then the tabletop design does things a little bit differently, but it's very much the same cards and idea there. So I think okay, I'll probably talk more about that in the next slide, but yeah, that was basically how this kind of got started there.
Yeah. So how, no, so you mentioned, I'm curious about the self-publishing lesson. So when you first just threw this game out, like, um, I assume with your gaming experience, you had been on Kickstarter a bunch and had seen all the stuff. So what was it like being on? I have never personally done a Kickstarter. I've done other type of crowdfunding stuff, but what was your experience with trying to do that for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, like I was definitely very inexperienced with it. I think one thing is like the costs were not something I was thinking about when I was designing the game. And I think if you want to ever do a Kickstarter, you also have to think about kind of like the costs. And so that was, I think, probably one of the things that I would definitely do differently, or a big lesson I took away from it is, when you're designing, you want to add in all these cool things, all these cool effects, you want to add in all these cards. And so I ended up with this game that was like really huge, and like you had all these different cards. I think it was like over 100 cards, and so and then you also had like a player board and then chips. And so I just kept adding in components without really thinking about, okay, is this like cost effective? Is this going to really add enough to the game that I can justify, increasing the cost of the game by X amount? And then you also have to like plan and budget for the costs of like artwork and graphic design, which I ended up doing myself, but I think was not very like professional, because I'm not a professional graphic designer. And so, yeah, definitely like the costs were something I wasn't prepared for. And that is something that is different from just like making like a good design, that I think
Right.
happens whenever you have to like do a Kickstarter.
Right. So how did this Kickstarter wind up? Was it successful in terms of hitting its goal and all that?
It wasn't, but I ended up selling like the prototypes to like some friends, and I didn't actually invest too much into it, thankfully. And that's one of the nice things about Kickstarter is like it lets you kind of, if it doesn't fund, then you haven't like purchased the print run yet. So,
Right.
yeah, it ended up being okay. But one of the things that I also think was interesting was a lot of the backers were like friends of mine and people I knew already. So I think that kind of actually made me a little bit more skeptical of Kickstarter, unless you have like a way to advertise the game and you think you can get like a lot of new people in. I think if you're gonna be selling to like a smaller audience that you already have access to, you don't necessarily need to go through Kickstarter. And so for me, where like I think, yeah, I guess, yeah, for Kickstarter to really work, especially for like someone who's going onto Kickstarter for the first time, like the advice is you should bring your own audience. And then I was just kind of thinking, like, if you're bringing your own audience, do you really need the Kickstarter? I think
What's the Kickstarter for? Yeah.
right. It's definitely an amazing tool for a lot of people. And I think if you can get past the initial hump of getting like a lot of backers, then maybe like it kind of snowballs because people like to back, the top projects or like stuff that's actually gonna happen. So so yeah, I don't know. It's that was just kind of an interesting insight that it's actually mostly going to be people though who are backing it, unless you maybe like I don't know can fund and then either do some advertising or something like that.
Right. The eternal advertising dilemma. Yeah. how to reach people. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, but I guess then this is kind of what the game looks like, and I brought it to like a bunch of conventions and playtested a bunch. So, yeah, and it's like a really big box game, but it, yeah.
Are there miniatures? Are there miniatures?
No miniatures, yeah. So that definitely helped. The miniatures would definitely be a huge cost
Yeah.
onto it. So yeah, definitely. I took a lot of takeaways from it in terms of and now kind of my philosophy is I try to stay to like simple games in terms of designing, just because I think like I really enjoy complex games, but I think it's a really tough tough to make them, and you like spend a lot of time on one design, and then if it like yeah, it's just like a lot more risk when you're designing, that you're gonna end up down this rabbit hole, and take too like to invest too much into like a really complex game. And what's nice about a simple game is you can turn a simple game into a complex game. So if you design a simple game and it's got like really solid mechanics and a really solid core, you can easily turn it into like something more complex if it needs that. So I kind of, after Dagger's High, definitely kind of try to avoid larger games. I know I didn't really follow that advice necessarily for one of my submissions in the solitaire contest, but it is something that I would definitely advise too, is just, and one of my takeaways is, start with like designing simple games if possible.
Right. And of course that comes down to like what you're trying to get out of it. Like some people like I knew one person who spent like 20 years recording like a music album that was like super, like super in depth and all that. And like some people like having like that one project to get through, and like so there's different approaches. But yeah, that, I mean, if you're trying to find a good idea to like share with other people, iterating is usually the best way to do it. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, okay. That brings into here, there's a little bit of a time gap where I was in college, and then in 2022 I started doing like a bunch of more board game design contests. So I guess like I was always aware of these, but I never really entered them until basically this year. And then I just did a ton of them. So
it seems to be the thing. Like once you find them, you're like, you get addicted. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And okay, I guess I can kind of go through all of them and just like a really short blurb on them. So this first one is for the one card contest called the Minnow Card. I was joint designing this with MLE on Board Game Geek, and she and I basically had this idea of what if it's like a double-sided maze where you can like hole punch the card and then like go to the other side. And that kind of made the theme of like the Minotaur, escaping the labyrinth kind of appealing, because that's kind of what you're doing. And so that kind of was just kind of like a fun idea of, okay, what if you had a hole puncher and used a card in there?
Yeah.
Color
it goes
Zero.
to your puzzle roots too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely, I mean, so one of the things is I never really, or well, I guess we never really turned it into like something with like really fancy art, or I think it definitely had like a lot of potential, but yeah, it was more of like, I would say one of the nice things about these design contests is, you kind of like, you can put in a lot of effort, or you can also kind of just experiment. And so for me, I guess at least I thought it was like a really cool experiment, even though we didn't really turn it into like a game that like looks really nice, or is something that like, you'd sell or something. But like, it's
well, do you
just
want to be punching holes in something that's really nice too?
right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, well, you really want to buy that. So yeah, it's just like a cool experiment basically, and I think it was cool.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, I don't know. All right, well, anyway, the next one is Color Zero. This was for the 54 card contest. This was actually, I got a really nice version sent via print on demand. So like one of my favorite sites now is Drive Through Cards, because they're like a print on demand service that can do cards, and basically only cards. They do also do tuck boxes, but if your game needs more than cards, then they usually can't do it. But what's really nice about them is for cards, I think they're the best in terms of print on demand. And so I like basically ordered that from them. But it's also, the idea is just, it's a cooperative Uno game. So I guess it's kind of deviated from Uno quite a bit, but you instead of like just the numbers, you have the colors, but then instead of the 4 colors, you also have the colors that mix together. So for example, orange might be like yellow and red, I think. And then if there's a yellow card, you could play the orange card on top of it. Or if it's orange, you could play like the yellow or the red card on top of it. So that was kind of interesting. And I guess to talk about the inspiration, and one area I think that has a lot of potential for exploration is I found that a lot of traditional card games, and also basically traditional card games, ended up becoming cooperative games. So there's Hanabi that, is kind of like solitaire, but now cooperative, and solitaire games in general too can become good cooperative games. But then there's the Crew, which is a very traditional game, bridge, but turned into a cooperative board game. And so these traditional card games that I think Uno is not really a traditional card game, but kind of.
It's a new classic. Yeah. Sure.
I think that has a lot of potential to take basically a traditional card game and turn it cooperative, because a lot of those traditional card games are like competitive, or maybe they're single player or something, and then and then that can like be a good baseline for mechanics that become like cooperative. So that was kind of the idea there, and I think definitely there's some potential there for more cooperative games to be invented.
Yeah, that seems to be a trend. Something that seems to be trending a little bit is co-op games. So that seems like it's in the right place.
Yeah, it's I also really do like cooperative games, for especially I don't know, sometimes like you can feel bad about like a competitive game where you have to be a little bit ruthless, and there's a lot of those games where you kind of mess with people a lot, and maybe you buy the thing they wanted, and then like now they can't like do everything, and so it's nice to have like the cooperative games to balance that out every once in a while, to like kind of detox some of like the bad things.
Right, exactly. And so when you were testing that game though, is this a game where there can be like an alpha gamer type thing, where is that problem? Because I know that's like the big problem in co-op games, that people, is like one person can just make all the decisions and the other people are just along for the ride. How did you grapple with that?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of my solution, but basically I said that you weren't allowed to show other people your hand, and that basically you could tell people what was in your hand. Like you could tell every card in your hand, but you couldn't reveal it. And so this like forced you to communicate if you wanted to actually like play well. And so I guess that kind of worked, but you still kind of have that alpha player problem. It's just kind of like a patchwork solution. I think that is definitely like a design thing. I've seen like maybe there's hidden role games sometimes where there's a traitor, and that can sometimes help a lot. I've seen like maybe the game is just everyone has like their own special power, and that can also help, eliminate alpha gaming a little bit. But it's definitely a problem with a lot of cooperative games, I think. So
it seems like the solution is usually just hidden information, like I know my cards, you don't know mine, or that type of thing. Like it's the only way to do it. It seems like.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, and I guess it's also very group dependent. Like I think if you notice an alpha player in your group, that can also be maybe the players should talk it out and be like, hey, maybe let's if you're the alpha player, like just telling them, hey, maybe don't talk as much.
Yeah. You get into real life problems, and yeah. Cool. Anyway, so yeah, what about your other games here?
Yeah, I guess. Okay, well, the next one is Idle 6. This one was for the 9-card contest, and the idea was, I don't know if you've ever played like Cookie Clicker or maybe those idle games. The idea on those is you click and then you like get one more cookie or like one more thing. And then as you get more stuff, like maybe once you have 10 cookies, you can convert it into like an increased button. So now every time you click the button, you get 2 cookies.
Okay. I have not played this, but I get the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called an idle game, and the idea is like you're waiting in line or something, and you just like click away, and
Right.
I don't know, get bigger and bigger numbers. So idle six is basically the whole gimmick is that you're trying to get like the biggest number, and so here it's like wait 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, it's like you could get like I don't know trillions of things at the end of the game, and I don't know it's like kind of weird. And so the idea is it's all in base 6 because it's using dice that are d6s to basically hold all the values. And so the rightmost one is like the ones digit, but it's also in base 6. So it's like 0 through 5. And then once you have 6, that turns into a 0. And then the next die, which is the tens digit, becomes a 1. And so then you have like these different actions, kind of like in like the video idle games, but kind of adapted to a tabletop way. So there's like multiply, which lets you multiply like the number you have by 2, or you can swap 2 dice, which is one that is kind of like works really well physically, I think, and not so well like in a video game. And then there's like other ones where you like flip a die, which is another mechanic that is kind of unique to the physical implementation. But other than that, it is very much you're just like getting higher and higher numbers and then trying to get like I don't know.
What's the highest score you ever got? What's the highest number?
Okay, well, one of the things about the game is there's the multiply. So if you like, so yeah, I basically maxed out at like yeah, like 6s for everything, or well, I guess it would be 5s for everything. But yeah, it's kind of like you play until you get bored. So I don't know. It's
it's
a little bit weird.
It's fiddly on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is what idle games are. You just play them until you get bored. And so there's no real win condition. So I did get some really good suggestions. Like, what if you made it like a real-time game, or maybe like something where you have a time limit? Then maybe there would be like an actual goal to play, and you just have to like move really quickly, or calculate really quickly. That could like nerf the multiply action because I mean, yeah, multiplying by 2 is not hard, but in base 6 it can kind of get a little weird.
Right, people don't think in base 6 very often. Yes, that's true.
So, yeah. Well, okay, yeah. That's basically that. I guess I already talked about Bizarre World, and then I'll just go over the other two really briefly. Sumo Sumo is kind of like graph paper racing, and then that game is you build up momentum. So like the whole idea is if you build up a lot of momentum, you can go really fast, but you're going to crash into the wall if you go too fast and you can't turn enough. So it's kind of like a push your luck. Okay, do you increase your momentum and go faster, but risk crashing, or do you kind of like play it safer, but you might lose the race because someone else is racing faster than you? And so the idea in Sumo Sumo is you kind of like adjust your weight distribution, like leaning forwards, leaning backwards, or whatever. And that if you lean forwards a lot, you go further every turn, but then you might like fall off the mat. And so it's just like this momentum-based game. And then Silent Plains is actually an expansion to Silent Ships, which I think I have a slide on later, but it's also kind of like I mean, I want to say the closest is probably like Summoner Wars, where you're playing on a board. And so it's like a card game, dueling card game, kind of like a collectible card game, but you're actually playing on a mat where you actually move the cards physically around and the positions matter. And so, gotcha. Yeah, that's something I think more like collectible card games haven't really done, because usually like you can just like put the monsters wherever and it doesn't matter which zone they're in that much. But I think it's kind of cool to be able to have like that tabletop physical component where, and like a lot of tabletop games you have area control and you like manipulate like the position of things, and then that is kind of missing from a lot of card games. So that was kind of the idea there, to try and explore that dimension.
Yeah, So when I look at all these games, I see a varied approach, which is, like I see some people like they like to work with a very specific type of thing, but here you're very broad in your different designs, which is cool. So when you're thinking of a design, is like, is there like a box you usually start in, or like how does a design start for you then? Because you're not thinking of like for me personally, I'm like standard deck of cards. That's where I start from. Like, where's your blank box for you?
Yeah, I think I try to I probably these days do more mechanics first. I know with Daggers High I did theme first, but for a lot of these we're just like, okay, for Idle 6, it's like, okay, how do you make like I guess there's no theme in Idle 6. I mean, that's not a great example.
Theme is being
Yeah,
bored, right?
like, yeah. Just yeah, maybe like the mechanic I wanted to focus on, and then kind of design around that. So yeah, I guess in terms of how do I kind of like come up with that mechanic in the first place, a lot of times it's either inspired by other games I enjoy. So I think especially for like Bizarre World and Silent Plains, like I really enjoy the collectible card games, like those dueling games where you're like against one other person and you're just trying to like duke it out with like your own deck. And so kind of like, okay, if I have that mechanic, then how would I improve it? Like what would I add to that mechanic to make it like compelling or unique or different than what already exists? And so for Silent Plains, that is like, okay, what if you have like this 3D movement aspect, which has actually been done before, but like, okay, maybe my own spin on
Everything has, right?
right,
Don't
yeah.
worry about it.
Or like, yeah, what if the cards are randomly generated? And so yeah, and then maybe for Idle 6, it's like, okay, idle games, but what if it's like a tabletop game?
Right.
So yeah, or like with Minnow card, what if you use a hole puncher?
Right. So
Yeah,
when
so
are you just sitting there playing games thinking, what if this game was different every time you play something?
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess maybe subconsciously though.
Right.
So
So you
I
can
like,
still actually enjoy the game. Yeah.
right. Yeah, I mean, I usually whenever I play a game, I like to kind of reflect on it too. And I think a lot of gamers do. Like there's often whenever I go to like a board game meetup or something, like after the game is done and like someone has won, or maybe like if the group has won or whatever happened, like people like to talk about it and say, oh, this strategy really worked well for me. That's like why I won. Or I tried this strategy and it didn't work
Right.
as well as I thought it would, or I was going for this and I just never saw it or whatever. Like, so everyone like talks about kind of what they did or, what like they wanted to do. And so I think there's like always a lot of reflection whenever I play games anyway. And so it's pretty easy to make the jump from, okay, was the strategy I used? And then maybe to, okay, what if the game itself like was different in some way? And so,
Right.
yeah, I have like that reflection after whenever I play like a game.
You don't say. I don't think anyone in the community has noticed that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right.
Playtesting 62 games. Anyway, we'll talk about
Yep.
that.
Yeah, we'll get there. Okay, yeah, actually, I do have a couple more, but okay, so on the right is the solitaire games, and then on the left is probably, I guess the game I'm probably most known for is Can't Touch This. So this was the in-hand contest this year, and it got first in like the multiplayer category. And I think part of it is just and one of the reasons why I really like the in-hand contest is it's really like easy to print. It's really simple.
Right.
And I also posted it on like Reddit, and what happened was somebody commented on my Reddit post and was like, hey, I'm an artist and I like made, I made your game, but I used like, I drew all the symbols and made them better, like look really nice. And, if you like it, do you want to like buy it from me? And I was like, sure, that sounds great. And so, yeah, I guess that's how I kind of found the artist. It was totally random. And yeah, he is really good at art. And I actually ended up doing another project with him. But
That's one of those people who's good at advertising that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's brilliant. I mean, like you can kind of go, on Reddit and like find like or on Board Game Geek actually, and find somebody who's made a game, and then like, if it's like a really simple game like this one, you can just like draw a couple symbols, throw it together. And he was like doing it for his portfolio. So he was like, okay, even if like you don't like it or whatever, could I still use it on like my portfolio that he's like building up to, get other people who are making maybe like a Kickstarter or whatever interested in maybe hiring him. So it was just all around like, I think, a really brilliant strategy, and clearly worked out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you can't really, it's hard to go the other way around, like go look at a illustrator's portfolio and create a
Mhm.
game for them, right? Be like, hey, are you interested in this game for your picture? Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, so I think, and also, okay, well, I'll probably talk about it later, but yeah, especially with games, art definitely is something that is super important when it comes to like actually getting out there, making people interested in the game. Um, but it also is something that, like, especially with design, at least in my experience, I usually go through a lot of iterations. And so it's kind of like this iterative design where, okay, I have an idea, and then like it totally changes, and then it becomes something else. And so that's another reason why I think usually the game has to come first before the art. If you get the art first, then you play test it, and then you need to change stuff. It becomes really hard once you have the art already.
Or it's easy to change it, but you're like, oh, I wasted all that time.
Yeah. I mean, maybe some designers work differently. I don't know. That's just my kind of experience with it.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like, from people I've talked with, that at least within this community, that seems to be the standard way of doing it, is don't make your things too visually complex at first, because you are changing things. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
so when you say this is like your best known game, like what do you mean when you say that? Like within, is that just like on Board Game Geek, or like are you talking about outside? Like what do you mean? Yeah.
yeah, I think it got just like the most response on Working Geek out of everything I posted. So like, yeah, I've posted a bunch of games, and then some of them like get a lot of comments, and some of them are like, I don't know, for various reasons, less popular. And this one was probably the one that got like the most comments and the most plays. And I think a large part of it is, yeah, it has like great art from that guy. So and then yeah, it's pretty easy to like print out.
Right. If the easier it is to print out on Board Game Geek, it seems like the easier. Or if you have a good digital implementation, because lots of people like to play that way too for the more complex games. Yeah.
One thing that I did get a lot of comments on, though, is that they didn't have like the right size of paperclip. So I guess that was maybe a barrier. A lot of people, yeah, supposedly went out and brought paper clips because their paper clips like weren't the right size or something.
Yeah, apparently they're not standard, because yeah, I was talking with someone else about a game they were developing, and they were trying to make the graphics fit the right way, and it's like, I have like a mixed pack of paper clips, and my large and my small don't fit the right way. So like, yeah, even when you try to make basic components, they throw you a wrench. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I think I made it even harder because I used like the jumbo size and not the like standard size. So yeah, that probably.
So they couldn't buy it at the corner store. They had to go to Staples to buy it or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, I guess it was the basic idea is it's an in-hand game. I think the in-hand contest is really cool. I definitely highly recommend anyone check it out. And they have the 2023 one up already. But it's the one constraint is that everything has to be held in your hand the whole game. So you can't like have a discard pile. You can't have any pile at all, because you can't hold all these different piles. So and what happened, I found, is it's a really restrictive condition, but that created like some of the most creative things. And so there were just a lot of really creative games in the whole contest in general. And so kind of my take on it was, okay, maybe the paper clips can be a way to hold it in your hand, because if it's clipped onto the card, it's not going to fall off, and you don't need to like put it on the table. So yeah, that was kind of like the whole idea of using the paper clips as like a component. And I think, yeah, that idea definitely came to me because of the restriction, and because the fact that like you have to hold it in your hand. And so that, yeah.
You would have been like, just make a board with, put cubes on it, like otherwise, right? It would have been just the standard way of thinking. Yeah. Where did you get that? Did you see paper clips used by somebody else, or paper clips come to your mind yourself?
I mean, I guess I've seen clips in games before. I don't know if I've seen paper clips that much. I guess I am aware that other people use it, but I haven't actually played a ton of other people's games with paper clips in them. So I guess, yeah, I just had paper clips lying around, and that's part of it. And yeah, I think they're like a very good budget component. Like most people have paper clips lying around, and they work really well as like sliders too. So if you have a game where maybe you have upgrades, paper clips work really well for that. And then you can slide the paper clip down. Okay, actually, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I did, when I was doing research on Daggers High, this is probably where I got the idea for paper clips. I like was researching other games that were like high school themed. And one of them was called Application Crunch, and they used paper clips. So that was probably in my mind somewhere. Yeah.
It all mixes together. Yeah. Oh yeah, where's the deluxe? Oh yeah, can you have a deluxe package of paper clips? It was the upgrade game,
Yeah, I think a lot of like yeah, if it's like an actual board game that you like buy from the store, they'll probably like have their custom slider, and so it might like effectively be a paper clip that you like clip on to like a card or whatever, but it is like fancy. So
it's stylized. Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Okay, and then on the right is just the stuff I like submitted into the solitaire contest. 2200 Escaping Earths with kind of, I don't want to say cheating, but I basically designed the game before the contest started. So yeah, that one was
I think a lot of people did that. That's why they had the separate category for game designed in the contest frame. So yeah,
that's true.
You're not cheating. I
Yeah.
think there were a good chunk of people who did that.
But
I think the person who won first place wasn't in the time frame either. So
Yeah. So I mean, it definitely, because if you want to make anything like really large, I think, which is what I was doing here, yeah, you probably need that extra time. The contest goes by really, really quickly, actually. So yeah. And here was just like, I really enjoy deck builders, so I wanted to like make my own deck builder, but deck builder with like 3D movement. So Silent Ships or Silent Plains was 2D movement, and here you actually like move between which card you're on as well. So there's like a third dimension.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was. I mean, after I like fully designed the game, I think it is kind of cool, but I probably could have kept the game like a lot smaller. So I do kind of think. And then another thing I got was that it was too hard. So I think
maybe you can make a 9-card version when the 9 card comes up.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think that actually would be good. But yeah, I also think that is one of the pitfalls of having played like a ton of deck building games is I know, like for me playing the game, it felt like the right difficulty, but I think it really was hard for a lot of people. And I also had the chance to like force my friends to play and then like observe them play it. And I think, yeah, like if you design the game and then also have like a lot of experience playing similar games, like you already know like the strategies. And so I think, and when you're designing, this is very tangential, but part of design is like you also you have like strategies in mind that you want to be viable, but you also like aren't always best off being super heavy-handed with it, because one of the cool things is the players can discover their own strategies. And so that's one of the cool things that I think makes a game compelling instead of just a puzzle. Like if you have like a very set idea of how you want the game to be played, maybe it's better as a puzzle, because then that's, you know, a very directed approach. But
Right.
if you want it to be more of like a game where the player has a lot more agency, part of it is letting the player discover like strategies that maybe you didn't even think of, and just giving them the tools to do that.
Right.
But in the end, I think I ultimately designed a bunch of cards that I think maybe like I had an idea of how they would work together, and that probably is kind of what ended up happening. And so then I don't know if people could like come up with their strategies as much as I was hoping for.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Also, like, so yeah, that's interesting because I don't design complex, larger games, so I'm curious about that mindset too. Like when you're saying like people found it too hard, but if you're trying to design a complex game, that sounds like it's doing its job to me, because, you know, it's not like the 10-minute game that's, you know, just to have a little fun, solve a little puzzle or go through a little story. Like a complex game should be hard. So so how do you determine when something is the right hard and versus like, you know, that seems like a tough question.
Yeah, definitely. I think you want probably the player to feel like it was their fault that they lost, and not like, oh, the game screwed me over. And maybe that didn't really come across too well in this game in particular, because one thing that can happen is you shuffle the deck and then maybe the first card is like the boss. Then you kind of
that would be a downer. Yeah.
I know. I've probably, yeah, if I had to, I could definitely, you know, work on this game a little bit more, I think. But yeah, I think it just outside of this game, but in general, yeah, if the player feels like they could have played better, then that kind of encourages them to play again and like, okay, I'm going to try this time. And so maybe, yeah, designing for that. I think, you know, luck obviously plays a huge role in games, and I think luck is great too, for like variability. But one thing that can happen is, you know, if the luck is too overwhelming, then people feel like nothing they do matters. It's just like, oh, if I got lucky, I win, and if I don't get lucky, I don't win. So you have to give the player tools to kind of manage the luck and feel like they have a way to like either escape bad luck or capitalize on good luck. And so, yeah, I think maybe that's something I should take my own advice on. But yeah, that would be probably my theory, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, again, it's just interesting to hear people's different point of views on that. I've never built a. How many cards do you have in that game?
Actually,
it doesn't look like
6 per zone, and I think there's 3, so probably like okay, I have to do some math in my head.
Didn't
like
say there'd be math.
Yeah. Or so, yeah. Yeah, so it was too much, but
yeah, that's hard to design and balance and all that. Yeah.
The thing was, I was having like a lot of fun designing it, so I kind of, yeah, that is another thing that kind of is, if I'm having fun, I'll just like keep doing it until like I get bored. So yeah.
And also, like, I find personally too, like sometimes a design like might not work, but like that idea might be the kernel for something else that works better later on. That happens a lot for me, so I assume that kind of stuff happens for every designer who's making a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think, yeah. And so I probably should have made it simpler, but yeah, I don't know. It was just something that I enjoy doing. So I guess, yeah. All right. Well, anyway, the next one is the one that I think I put in a lot more time. Well, I wouldn't say more time, but like during the contest, at least, I put a lot more effort during the contest into the next one, which is Master Udo. And this one I actually did design during the contest. But the idea with this game is that you cover up half of the card with the next card, and then you try to string the longest combo you can, and that will let you do the finishing effect. So the finishing effect here is deal X to 2 targets or block X twice. X is how many cards are in the combo. So if you string along a really long combo, your X is really large, and then you're going to deal like 3 to 2 targets in this example. And so it's a very puzzly game because the thing that's preventing you from just putting all your cards down in like this huge string is these conditions. So like this right arm card can only be played in the odd position in the combo. So it's in the first position. So it works. The right arm has to be played after or before a left arm or left leg. So it's before the left leg. And so that's okay. And then the left leg can only be used in a combo size of 3 or less. So then you can put it in the combo that way. And really, this actually came because, well, I did dabble in reviewing board games actually like a while ago. So what happened is there's like this Facebook group called like Board Game Reviewers, and I had like a blog, and I just kind of like posted there, okay, I'll review your game. And so one of the games that got sent to me was called Beatdown Streets of Justice. And it's a really like small game. I think, yeah, it's very obscure. And they had like a very similar mechanic actually, where you would like string cards together. And one thing that I'm trying to remember how it worked, but I don't think they had like a condition. So I guess my kind of spin on that kind of mechanic is, what if like there's something actively discouraging you from just stringing out like the longest combo that you can?
Right.
So that
That
was
sounds
kind
like
of,
oh, sorry. I was just going to say that sounds like a collectible card type thing too, right? With these combos. So it seems like a lot of that comes from that. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think so. Although here, for this game in particular, you have the 10 cards starting in your hand at the start of the game, and that's just that. And so it's not module like a collectible card game, but I guess in terms of playing it, it definitely probably feels that way when you like string together a combo.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
And that was the
So-
one that was like, that got some category, that placed highly in some categories in the voting, right?
Yeah, I was really happy to see. I think it got like, I actually don't remember. I probably paid more attention to that. But yeah, I did see it pop up on the list. So that was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, oh yeah, there's this slide. So these are the other games that I didn't really submit to a contest. So for some of those games in the contest, like I had already designed it and then it like kind of fit into a contest category. But there were a couple that I like had designed just like for fun or whatever that like didn't slot into category, or I designed it like too long ago, so it didn't qualify anymore. And then so that's Silent Ships, which is basically, it's Silent Planes, but just like the first edition basically. And then Mining Inc., which uses paper clips. And then one game that I did want to kind of, as the showcase for today, briefly go over. It's like 3 to 5 players, so we won't be able to actually play it, but I can probably show that off. But I'll finish the slide first.
Yeah.
So one thing I've always been trying to do is like for me personally, I just kind of want to get like my games out there, I guess. And so one thing that I think is kind of tough about that is, it's just, like, you can enter into the contests and get a lot of people playing it that way. But like most people, I would say, just kind of want to like get a game and then play it and not want to like print it out. So one thing I've been trying to do is kind of be like my own self-publisher. And so I guess I've heard like a lot of designers also sharing this sentiment, like, okay, how do I like actually get my game out there? So I've tried like a lot of different things, and I'm still experimenting and trying to, yeah, do it better. But one thing that a couple of things I found that work really well is, first, I have Big Cartel in there. So someone recommended this to me actually. I'm in like some kind of like tabletop design Discord, and like they were like, hey, try out Big Cartel, because you're trying to sell your games and you can like ship them to people. And the nice thing about Big Cartel is, like, if you list it on Amazon or eBay or something, like they're going to take a cut of it But I mean, if you're listing on eBay, you're already, you're already mailing it out yourself. You're already putting it in the package yourself and doing all the work. And so the nice thing about Big Cartel is it's your own website, and you also basically don't have to do any cuts. So okay, there's also that slide. But so yeah, basically this is the storefront that basically I set up with Big Cartel, and you basically can sell, or I've been selling my games this way basically, and directing people to this site where they can click on it and add it to their cart and check out. And then I would be the one who's actually mailing it out to them. Like I would buy bubble mailers and send it via first class mail. And what I found is actually like not hard at all. And for like a small volume of orders, like it's very feasible for me to just mail it out all myself. So yeah, it's something that I've been trying to do to like kind of get the game to people. And I've had some people like I charge shipping afterwards. And so there were some people like in like the UK who like brought the game, and they like paid for the shipping. And so it was really cool to just have that happen, I think, and send it like somewhere.
Yeah, a physical copy of your game is living on the other side of the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder how they like the game. That is one thing about like this is like so what I did for advertising, mainly what I found is paying for advertising just didn't work at all, but making posts worked really well. So what I would do is I would go to maybe a subreddit, or I would go on Facebook into like a group, and I would post like, hey, check out this game. And that actually got like a lot more traction than trying to buy ads. And so I think the nice thing about that is that's totally free. So yeah, it's
all you have to do is be part of the community first, right? So there is that. I mean, not free, but people are much more likely to not like, hey, I'm Joe Schmo from this company trying to, like you're actually like part of the community. So it makes a difference,
Yeah, I try to do that. And they usually have a rule where like 10% can be self-promotion for most things on Reddit at least. And but I've definitely had posts taken down because of self-promotion.
Oh, really? Gotcha.
So
you push the limit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do kind of have to sometimes to really get it out there. I mean, like, I know I used to feel really bad about self-promotion in general, but I think like if you don't self-promote it, then like no one sees it. And that's sad. So yeah,
I personally have a big problem with that. I hate doing the marketing stuff. So
yeah. It can be kind of like you'll spend like a day marketing it, and it's really draining for sure.
Yeah. So how much success have you had with this so big? It sounds like it seems like it's kind of like a WordPress type thing, just with just the storefront built in. Yeah. So how has this worked out for you in terms of what you're hoping to get out of it? It sounds like you're happy with it.
Yeah, I think it's something I've only kind of recently done, and it seems to be working more than Amazon. So so in terms of like all the different things I tried putting on eBay, and that didn't really work. And then I put games up on Amazon, and yeah, I don't think I made many sales. Like, yeah, basically you have to ship the games to Amazon to their warehouse, and that takes a really long time. And then once they have the games, I think like Amazon takes a pretty big cut, so I had to charge more than I really wanted to. And what was nice is it got included in Prime, but I think like overall it just wasn't like worth it. And so I'm liking this more than everything else I've tried, I guess is how I would describe it. So yeah.
And you're having at least more direct connection with the person who ordered it. At least like you have their email address or whatever. Because I used to be a director of e-commerce for a music company years ago. And so I dealt with Amazon a lot, and I do. And so from the seller side, I really do not like Amazon. Because you don't get any of their, like you don't have their email address, or you don't have anything. So like, doing it yourself, you can at least maybe keep the connection open if they want to. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, yeah, and I don't know, I guess, this is definitely more on the entrepreneurial side. So I know a lot of designers would like stay away from this entirely. I guess I kind of enjoy that kind of thing.
It's
I
a
don't
game
know.
into its own, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and yeah, it's really kind of, I guess, rewarding to like sell a game. Um, but yeah, it's definitely more entrepreneurial than just like design. I think honestly, like what I probably should do if I really wanted to get my game out there is just like pitch a lot to publishers. And so I'm thinking of maybe doing that, like going to like some conventions. I know is a way to do it. Although, yeah, I haven't really had a lot of success pitching, I'll say. Although mostly my attempts have been like sending an email being like, hey, this is a game. So I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't talked to anyone yet for these chats who has had a game published properly by a, I mean, not properly, but by a publisher. Other than Uberdante, who had a game by Button Shy, but that's because someone said
Yeah,
like,
that's
"Hey,
awesome.
your game is, hey, this guy's game is cool, do it." And so it was, he wasn't even like pitching, someone found it for him. So yeah, I don't know about the pitching process or what to do there. So
The only thing I've really heard about it is a lot of publishers go to these conventions. And so that is like a good way to meet publishers, is to go to those. I haven't really gone to a lot lately, so I don't know.
gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. Uh, I guess, yeah. Um, it's either way, like gonna be pretty tough to go through like a publisher too. Um, I have seen like some publishers talk like posting about it, and they're like, oh yeah, we opened it up for submissions and we got like 200 submissions, and I'm just like, oh wow, because they only choose one. And so I
Right.
think it is similarly kind of brutal in terms of competition. When even if you're pitching, it's not like a magic bullet to getting your game out there. um, so I guess in that sense, self-publishing does kind of make sense too. It's like, you don't have to pitch it and like kind of get lucky with the pitching, because yeah, you don't have to pitch it if you're making it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Anyway, that was that, and then yeah, I guess I just did want to show off. Okay. I guess I have to close that. Orp. So just to kind of talk about this one is the art is by Nicolaj, who did the Can't Touch This art. So this is the project I was alluding to earlier.
Mhm.
And the idea is you are a space merchant and you are trading these, you're trying to collect these goods for your wealthy client. And so your wealthy client wants all these weird things. So maybe your wealthy client wants, okay, that didn't work. 2 yukatas, 2 beetles, and 1 device. So this would be your request card. And that's like your secret goal for the game. That's what you're trying to get, and then you win the game. And then, yeah, the kind of gimmick there is everything is in the Orpian language, which you don't understand. So you don't have no idea.
I certainly don't. Yeah.
Yeah, anything means. And so you might have a card. You might have the Morp card, for example. And who knows what a Morp is? It could be a potion. It could be a yukata. But if it is the yukata and you have this request, you would need 2 of the Morps. So if the Morp is a yukata, and you would know that because okay, these are supposed to pair up. Okay, I kind of, yeah. So like if the Morp equals the yukata and there's that equal sign there, then the yukata is a Morp. And so if you had this request, you would need 2 of these Morp cards. Yeah, these are 2 yukatas here. And so yeah, basically.
So you're playing those equal signs down yourself. That's part of the gameplay. Players are choosing what words mean.
It will be kind of assigned to them at the start of the game. So in that sense, it is variable though. So it does change from game to game. And so you might have this pair, and then that would mean that the Snorp is the beetle. But from within a single game, it's set. So the
Gotcha,
smoke will
gotcha.
always be a beetle in this example. So every player has their own pair of cards, and then that would be the translation of that symbol. And so everyone has their own information about the game that nobody else knows. And so the gameplay is going to be you go around asking other people questions about, oh, is your symbol card the Morp? Is your symbol card the beetle? They can bluff, and then you can call them out on it, and they would take a penalty. Or if they were telling the truth, you would take a penalty for calling them out. And so then gradually you get more and more information until you figured out what everything is, or at least what you want is. And then you can do other actions, like you can draw cards, and then you can swap cards with players. And those just help you get the 5 cards you need. And once you do, you would win. You would flip this over and say, I've won. And then you would check to make sure you've won. But then if you did actually win, then you would win.
Yeah, cool. So it's a deduction game, but also kind of a resource management game too.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
It's got those aspects. So one thing that it's very similar to is these logic puzzles. So
right.
and like there's this like logic puzzles. Oh, like the person who is French lives in the blue house. The German, does not lives between the red and yellow house.
Peter is French. Yeah.
Those kind of logic puzzles. Yeah. So and then so I gave basically in the game you can fill out this little grid as you discover more information.
Are you required to make up your own Orpian name on the sheet?
You can, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, all the words end in orp. So I guess based on that, you might just add orp to the end of your name.
Okay, yeah.
Your name would be Matt
Matorp. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So how does this? Yeah. So go ahead. I'll let you go.
Oh, I didn't have anything to say. I just.
Oh no, I was gonna say. So have you played this with people in real time testing, or and how are people, do they latch onto the deduction part of it, or do they find the resource management more interesting? Like, what kind of feedback have you gotten on this game?
Yeah, I have done a bunch of in-person games, and I think people really like the puzzle of it the most. So I think that was a big success in terms of, oh yeah, you're solving your own like mini logic puzzle. Some people didn't like the deduction. Some people didn't like the bluffing, and other people did like it. So it was kind of mixed there. But yeah, I think in terms of what people latched onto, it was probably mostly kind of the puzzle-y kind of aspect of the game.
Gotcha. So that's interesting because I feel like a lot of like the puzzle games, people for multiplayer, like it feels like multiplayer solo. So this seems like it's very much not multiplayer solo. Feel like it's very interactive, but you still get your own unique puzzle. That's cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that is true. That is a very common criticism. I guess, yeah, it is in some sense. It has some more direct ways of influencing the opponent. So there is that. But yeah, it is definitely, I mean, it actually wasn't originally intended to be a puzzle game. It did change a lot. It started out as basically the idea was one thing that I try to avoid, I wouldn't say I try to avoid it, but yeah, like victory points and then like having victory points be the win condition kind of is a little weird to me. And actually at the start I did have that, and my idea was let's have every different symbol correspond to an unknown effect. So maybe the glorp would give you -1 victory points, but you don't know that, and you're just like collecting glorps, and then at the end like it's revealed it's -1, and then you get like a boatload of like negative victory points.
Right.
And like everybody would know like one of the symbols like effects, and so maybe you would know the norp, and then that's like 3 victory points, so then you would be getting all the norps. Or if you knew the glorp was -1, you would get rid of all the glorps. I guess I kind of moved away from that because I didn't like the victory points, And so I tried to find a way, okay, is there a way to make it so that, there's the same idea of like, you don't really know what everything means and you're trying to figure it out. But as you're trying to figure it out, like you win the game. And so, yeah, that was kind of where I came up with, oh, it pairs up with the items. And then it kind of coincidentally is a logic puzzle. So
Yeah,
yeah,
just all those things mashing in your subconscious. Yeah, of course.
yeah.
And how did you come up with the theme of the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a good friend who's pretty like adamant that the theme should be like mixing drinks or something. But I guess yeah, I was already having like these really weird names like Blorp, Norp, Dorp, or whatever, and so it just kind of made sense as like an alien language kind of thing, I guess. Yeah, and then I guess then it took a really long time to come up with the name, but I don't know. I think eventually what happened was I kind of came up with the symbols, and then like they all ended up in ORP, and so doing something with that for the name kind of made sense, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, you said you were dealing in you're already dealing in glorps and norps, and like, why were you dealing in glorps and norps to begin with? Where did that come?
Yeah, I guess I started with symbols. So like the first playtesting copies were like, oh, one of them is a circle, one of them is a triangle, one of them is a square. And then like I decided to give them names, and then I just like came up with gibberish for that.
Then the gibberish stuck. Yeah. Gotcha. Cool. And then working on the art. So you said it was that the guy you were working with for the other game.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? So you had, when did you reach out to him? Like you said, you should probably make sure did you make sure the game was in a good place before you reached out to him? Did you have to backtrack, all that stuff,
Yeah, I think I already had the game pretty much designed. I did make some changes, but they were minor rule changes basically. And I reached out to him actually because I mostly just was sharing with him like, oh yeah, news about Can't Touch This. And then I like briefly mentioned that I was working on like a game about like translating alien words. And then I think I said I was just looking for like the symbols at that point. So I was like, oh yeah, maybe, because I knew that he like made the symbols for Can't Touch This. So I knew him as like a good symbol artist. So I was like, hey, are you interested at all in doing the symbols? And then he like really latched onto it. He was like, this sounds really, really cool. I really want to do this project, and I'll just do all of the art if you want. And I was like, yeah, sure. He sent me some of like some sketches that were really, really good. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And then I think because he was so enthusiastic about the game, that really motivated me, I guess, to kind of pursue like actually publishing it. Especially, I think he did just like a really, really good job with the art. So like,
it's really nice.
Yeah. I guess that was a large part of also really pursuing this game. And so working with him was really, though, we did it all via email, and then I just basically emailed him my files and like kind of described the game, and then he would kind of email me back and say, okay, here's my idea for how I want to do things. And he actually had like a lot of graphical ideas. So like the equal sign was his idea there. And then like kind of he helped me kind of guide the game actually to make more thematic sense. So he came up with a name of locked containers for the card backs and for these cards, because he was saying, if you're actually buying stuff from the market, wouldn't you like know what you're buying? Like you would, like if you're buying a squid, for example, you don't need to know the word for squid. You see that it's a squid, so you're like, you brought a squid. And so the solution was maybe everything is in a locked container. And then that way you don't know what you're buying, and because you don't speak the language, you also don't know what it is. And that would explain why you couldn't, like just look at the item. And so, yeah, I think he definitely helped a lot with like the theme and just like the graphical improvements that I think made the game a lot better, actually.
Interesting. So reaching out and working with someone else helped. I mean, it's just like getting feedback from a playtester, but it's from even the graphical point of view, even when they're trying to create it, can help influence the actual gameplay itself. So yeah, no, I guess it didn't. Did it influence the gameplay, or I guess it just the design of the cards? Like the lock container doesn't necessarily influence the gameplay so much, I guess.
Right. I mean, I guess it was closely related to the gameplay. There were other things that he brought up that were really like good points. Like, how do we differentiate the symbols so that they're like differentiated enough so that when you ask about, someone's card, like you could say, oh, do you have the morph, or do you have that square shaped thing, or do you have the yellow card? And so kind of like, I guess that does have an impact on gameplay, because I do see like when I'm observing people play, they will use that. They'll be like, oh, do you have the square or something? And I think that's like a result of him keeping that element from like the symbols. And then even when he's doing the art, like, yes, they are really fancy now, but they still have like those features that are distinguishable. So I think in that sense, like the art and graphic design does influence the gameplay, because if you have like maybe graphic design that's harder to distinguish, then maybe people like have a harder time asking questions, I guess. Right. I mean, I guess that's maybe not gameplay so much and more like experience, but still, I do think it did influence, the game.
Yeah, it enhances beyond just the graphic. Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha. So what's like a turn order in this game? So what do you do on your turn?
Sure. Yeah. Basically, there's these. You would ask a question first, and then after that, you can do any of these actions. So you could ask a second question, or you could draw a card, or you could swap with somebody. And then in the 3 to 4 player game, because every person in the 5-player game gets dealt like the pair, there's like pairs in the middle for like the 3 to 4 player game. And so you can look at those in the 3 to 4 player game by discarding cards. And so that's basically one of the only ways to actually see those. And so that would be your turn. You ask a question, and then you get some information. Maybe you'll write it down on your pad. And then after that, you'll just take a second action.
Gotcha. Forced trade. Ooh, that seems harsh. There's some of the, yeah.
Some of the interaction, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And then so you can get up, so you can only have 5 cards. And the game ends just when someone meets their criteria.
Yep.
Gotcha. Cool. And how long does this game take to play?
Yeah. It's a pretty short game. I think between 15 and 30 minutes probably would be the range. Gotcha. Yeah, and it could be, yeah, I don't know. I haven't actually timed it. I always forget to do that. I think that's a good practice though. If you're doing play tests, to time it. And I think that's probably, I mean, it's kind of almost made fun of how there are some games out there where like the printed time does not match at all the actual time to play, like Through the Ages, or like I don't know, Twilight Imperium, like say I don't know what they say, but whatever they say, it's like inaccurate because it takes way longer. But I think one thing that I always forget to do, that I always like, I'm like, okay, the next time I make a game, I'm going to do this, is like just timing the game. So I really don't know, I guess. I shouldn't really say it is, but my feeling is that it is between 15 and 30 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like if you play a game enough times, you can act. I feel like I always forget to time it too, and then like when I do time it, it's like, oh, that was pretty close to what I estimated. Like,
true.
Yeah, you feel like if you play enough times, you have an idea of how long it takes.
Yeah.
The difference is with my games of solitaire, I bet like with 3 to 5 players, that can vary greatly depending on the people. Like if you have 3, analysis paralysis people, that game's going to take a lot longer than you have just 3 people like, whatever. you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess yeah. So disclaimer, I don't actually know, but I think it's 15 to 30 and it may vary.
Yeah, yeah, okay, cool. Um, so what is so what about this game? So you have a whole bunch of games you show before. What is about it? This game is why you wanted to highlight this one. What gets you excited about this one, particularly? You know.
Yeah, I think a lot of the other games I made before, I basically well, this is like my latest one, and I think like I took a lot of the lessons because I'm trying to actually I guess sell this one. I think it's a lot more marketable than some of my other games because of the art and like some of the other decisions. And one of the things is it's like if it's on like a tuck box, so it's really easy for me to mail out. So I guess yeah, um, just because
This is your pitch. This is your pitch.
yeah,
You're working on it.
right, yeah. But yeah, it's just like I don't know, probably the one that's closest to like an actual finished game, because the other ones, like I either didn't get professional art yet, or they're like just not ones I'm pursuing to actually try and self-publish at all or publish at all. So this is definitely the most polished game I think I have right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems very interesting. I'd be curious to try it out. I mean, the theme is tough for me and the type of people who might play games with me. But the concept of it is, I like it. Yeah, I like the idea of it.
That's what my friend was saying. He was like, you're going to get so many more people to play this game if just change the theme to mixing drinks.
Well, you could you could have 3 different versions of it, right?
That's right. Yeah.
To appeal to all the different groups. Yeah, because I mean, there's definitely obviously a group that this theme is appealing to. So yeah.
Right.
But
I do think it is probably because maybe it's because I did mechanics first. It is probably one where you could have multiple themes. Yeah.
Right. Just you can replace gibberish easy enough with real words, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
There. Okay. Well, it's kind of a tangent, but I think yeah, another suggestion was it could be like everything is in the wrong cabinet, like the spoon cabinet set contains forks or something, or and so that could be like another fun theme, like if everything's misplaced instead of you're translating something. But yeah, I don't know.
Sounds like whoever friends you're talking to are just hungry. They want drinks. They want utensils.
Yeah.
Have them with some food, then they can give you suggestions. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Well.
Yeah.
We're
More on this slide
with this. Okay, this is just a fun one. Like I was trying to design a game on the business card. Because I was
thought about that too. So I'm curious about this.
Basically, because I was participating in the 1 card contest, I didn't get this done in time, but basically, a business card, has this backside that you don't really use. And so maybe that could be a game, basically. I think I've seen like people do this. I don't know, but wherever that idea came from, and in terms of actually implementing it, I was thinking about a lot of different things, but if you're holding the business card, then maybe you can use your fingers somehow as like a component. So that kind of got into this. It's really a guessing game. And then you like put your thumbs on the numbers that you have and your opponent kind of guesses them. And so that way you kind of use your thumbs there. So that was kind of a mechanical idea. How do you use thumbs? And then I guess I was like, okay, maybe you cover something and then the opponent guesses it. So that's kind of where that came from. But it's just kind of fun for fun, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game on the back of business card isn't gonna. You don't want it to be a super thinky game, right?
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a very casual game.
Yeah, well, so your business card, like here's like a little bit of information, here's a little bit of fun, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think one of the things is like, so for people who did do the one card contest, maybe you can put your game on your business card if anyone's watching this who did the one card contest. So there's like that actual application there. I think, yeah, I guess you can't do double-sided really, but anything single-sided for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you could, depending on your card, you could do double-sided, but then you just have to put your information overlaid over some of it to get some blank space. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, then you'd be able to print out a bunch of your games super quick and easy, right? For like get
Exactly.
50 copies of your game for $20 or whatever,
Yeah. Or actually, I think if it's a business card, it's like you could print 1,000 business cards and it would be like maybe $30. So
I haven't
yeah.
printed a business card in a long time, so I don't know what the price is yet. $30 for 1,000, sure, sounds great.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, probably depends too on like the add-ons you put on.
Oh yeah, you want to get like the fancy gold emblems and all that.
Yeah, if like there was like a $5 charge for rounded corners, which I decided not to do, but yeah, so like you can do all sorts of add-ons and
Well, it'd be interesting if you could make that stuff into the game. Like if you had like because you used to be able to like raised stuff. So like you can make like a maze or something by using raised stuff on that.
Yeah. I do wonder what, like I got them from Office Depot, I think. So I wonder what the employees thought actually. Maybe they didn't care. They just
I feel like those people don't pay attention too much. They're just printing stuff out all day, right? But maybe one of them played it and was enjoyed it.
Yeah. It's definitely, I guess, I mean, unusual probably, but yeah, I don't know.
So you actually hand these out, and what do people say when you hand them out to them? Do they have any type of reaction?
Usually it's just like, oh, that's cool. I don't know. I haven't actually played it that much with people, because usually when I'm handing out business cards, it's like I'm leaving or something, or like it's just like a really short interaction, and so the game doesn't get played. It's also like 2 players, so it wouldn't be like, would have to be like a one-on-one kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, people think it's cool, I guess. At least they say so.
What people say to your face, yeah, sure.
Right.
Cool. I like that idea. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And now, I guess the final thing that final section is, okay, well, I guess this is just equipment. This is just gonna be really quick, like kind of what I use to print and play stuff. But
people were definitely interested about this when they were saying you might be on there. Like, I wonder what he uses. Like, how does he do all that?
Yeah. Okay, well, I would say this is kind of like a must-have. It's the Brother printer. I have the model number up there, but basically it's a color printer that uses toner. And I think toner is really superior to ink in terms of affordability. Because the thing about toner is it doesn't like dry up. And so you can have it last a lot longer. And even if you're printing frequently, it's still cheaper per page to print. So if you're talking about the long run, like, yeah, this printer is kind of expensive. It's like, I think like $250, but if you get a $30 printer, in the long run, you're going to be spending a lot more for ink. And I'm really happy with this printer. So that's why I would recommend it. And then, I don't know, I use third-party toner just because like I could buy a printer with the cost of the toner, if that makes sense. So like they sell this toner for like $300. So I was like, yeah, and I tried a bunch of third-party toners, and yeah, the quality is a little worse. So if you're going for like total quality, maybe you want to go with official ones. But I think, if you're just trying to like print stuff, the third-party toner works really well. And so I've had like pretty good success with a brand called Color King. Yeah, so that is what I use basically to print everything. And yeah, just regular printer paper, I guess.
Gotcha. So you don't use thick paper or anything. You just use the regular stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then how about how about like your slicing and dicing process?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I did just want to mention I did buy a bunch of linen paper and I used that actually for like can't touch this or like if I'm making like a really nice prototype, but I usually don't do that because I think it's way faster to print on regular paper and then laminate it. So that's what I often do if I'm trying to make like something that will last a long time. And if I'm just play testing, I won't laminate it either. I'll just play with the paper.
Right, right. Especially when you're going through all those games. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that would add up a lot. Because what?
Right.
Okay, so what? Oh, go. Yeah, I'll ask questions after. Go ahead and continue with your slide here.
All right. Okay. This is not something I use that much, but okay. In case anybody is looking for a 3D printer, because I'm seeing more and more games use 3D printed components. There was Garden Builder in the Solitaire contest. There's another one called Lava Ley Lines in like a wargaming contest that uses 3D printing. So I think it's starting to catch on. And so if you're curious about it, this is like the cheapest good printer. So if you're looking for like a 3D printer that will last like a long time and like is a good printer, but is also really cheap, this is kind of the model that I would recommend and I think is most often recommended. And I got a really good deal from Micro Center. They had like $100 off. And then also they were selling refurbished ones. So someone returned the 3D printer because they didn't want it anymore. And then they repackaged it. And then so Micro Center took an additional discount. So this was like cheaper than the Brother printer. It was like $60. So the 3D
Oh,
printer
wow.
was cheaper than the actual printer. Yeah.
Crazy.
And so I think it's a really good time right now to get into 3D printing because of how affordable it is. The only thing I'll caution is it does sort of turn into like another hobby. So it can take up a lot of time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the maker space in my city has like the 3D. That seems like a good way to get into it without buying it first. It's like try. I don't know how maker spaces how popular they are everywhere else, but a lot of them have 3D printers that you can try out. That way you can see if it's your thing before spending the money and diving into the deep end.
For sure. And also the other reason I wanted to kind of bring up the cost though is because I think a lot of people have the impression that like a 3D printer costs like $3,000. And that was the case like 10 years ago. So the cost has really like kind of gone down a cliff basically. So
that's cool.
It's a lot more affordable than it was in the past. So yeah, it's yeah.
How much is like the materials cost for the yeah?
Well, one roll is going to be like $15 to $20 depending on the color and like the like you can get like translucent or glow in the dark filament too if you want to get fancy. But yeah, the standard ones are probably like $15 and then they last for quite a while. I guess yeah.
It's not uncomparable with toner and ink and all that stuff then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely more affordable than ink, I think. Right. And ink is actually, I read somewhere that it's supposedly pretty easy to produce and they just mark it up because that's like good business.
How dare they?
Yeah, well, I mean, it does make sense though, because like that way they can sell the printer for like really cheap. And so I guess that's the business model. Like they give you a really nice printer and you get a really good deal on the printer and then they like make it back on the ink.
Right. They hook you in. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the annoying things I found about other printers too, like ink printers is like once you run out of like the yellow, then you have to buy like you can't print at all. Even if you're just printing like black and white. So the Brother printer, I guess, tries to stop you from printing if you are low on toner, but there's like an override that you can do to keep printing, which is nice.
Gotcha. So you can work around.
Yeah. Nice. I wonder if like someone someday is gonna like, I don't know, hack like because they always release software updates and one of the I guess jokes is that when you update your printer, it gets worse because they remove all they basically make it so that the third-party toner doesn't work anymore or the third-party ink doesn't like read anymore. So Like whenever you update the printer, it like gets worse on like when you're like updating, you know, your computer or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe someone will like develop like a hack or something. I don't know. That could be
Open source printer.
exactly right. Yeah.
There we go.
Anyway, that's a real tangent. So back to kind of okay. All right. Yeah, this slide. I have a bunch of other things I use. So I mentioned the laminator. Um, the corner rounders are really nice too. If you want to make like rounded corners on your cards, they're just really nice. I found clear card sleeves work really well, especially if you have Magic the Gathering cards. You can put like paper into the sleeve and then also the card into the sleeve. And then you have like something that feels like a card, but it's really easy to do.
Right.
Sometimes I use like cardboard from packaging. So if you take a tissue box, you can like glue on paper onto it and then cut it out. And then that gives you like your cardboard tokens. Okay, I talked about the linen paper. You can use gloss or matte spray on top of the linen paper to make sure the toner actually stays in there. And then it looks a little bit nicer. Glue just to like glue stuff. Especially a lot of designers have like an 8-card format where you fold the card and or paper in half and then you have to glue it. And then that helps with the alignment issues a lot actually. So that is a really popular one for making really nice prototypes, print and play prototypes.
Right.
And then like the staples are like dice and cubes and other materials.
Right.
The other thing I have that I didn't put on here actually is a paper cutter that's like a guillotine paper cutter. That was a huge improvement for me over scissors. I would definitely highly recommend that because it just saves a lot of time and you can cut like a lot of paper at once and you get really straight lines too.
Yeah, I got one of those those sticky pads and like the X-Acto knife. I got one of those set up, which is not as nice as the guillotine, but it's a midway ground, at least between scissors.
Yeah, no, actually X-Acto knives are probably more I guess, I mean, depending on how good you are with them, probably more accurate. So the guillotine, is it guillotine or
Guillotine. If you're saying it the French way, guillotine. Yeah.
okay, guillotine? Yeah, it's just faster, I would say, and also pretty accurate. You can't go wrong with it, usually.
Yeah. My parents owned a print shop when I was a kid, so I was very familiar with those things.
Oh yeah.
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 Cool.
Okay, and then finally the process is so yeah, what I would do is I would basically choose like 5 to 6 games and print out the files all at once. And then like I would just let it print and then later that day or maybe later like in the week or whenever I had time, I would just play the games I printed out. I would cut them out and everything and then just play them consecutively. And one thing I started doing after I decided that I wanted to play all of them is actually, yeah, I would basically go in with the mindset of I'm just printing this out and then I'm gonna play test it like one time. And then so the components are probably like gonna be basically like I'm not gonna put like so much effort into the components. I'm just gonna print it out and then cut it out and then play with just like the paper. And so that really helped cut down on the time needed to like make the games. And I found that like doing them like one after the other, like if I make the 5 games or 6 games at once, it's easier because then I have all the materials set out and then like I'm doing the same thing. So it does save a little bit of time there.
So you had like a week. So you had like a weekly process of cycling through the stages. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the stage would be making everything. So I would make like 5 or 6 at once and then play them in another stage. And the nice thing about having that mindset is also like these games are changing. So, you know, after they get feedback and everything, like the game is going to get better. And so the other logic behind that is, you know, I can just print again later once the improvements come in. So, so I guess that goes back to kind of like this philosophy of just iteration. Like, you know, I think, if you have the mindset of I'm just going to play this and then improve it and then like print it and play it again, then like, yeah, you can go like a lot faster. Kind of like a move fast and break things, I guess, to summarize the philosophy there is, yeah, I wouldn't like put too much time into actually making the games, because my mindset was I'm going to like move fast through this game, play it, and then like kind of give feedback. And then maybe later I'll come back and make it like a really nice game afterwards, a really nice copy afterwards.
Yeah.
And then a part of that is I would annotate directly on the rules. So I would also print out the rule book. And then this is, I think, Garden Builder. And then like, this is an example of, I would just like write my feedback on the rule book. And then that really helped, because then I would take all my rule books, go to my computer, and basically type out what I had written on the rule books into like my feedback. So yeah, that was basically the steps I used. And I don't think there's anything like groundbreaking or anything like that other people like couldn't emulate. It's just I guess I had a really high focus on efficiency, which is probably why I could play like so many games.
No, but it sounds like you had a good process here too, that like this might seem simple, but like I've been in contests where I printed out too many games, and by the time I went to try them, the rules had changed. And like, you know, it's like coming up with that sweet spot of knowing I'll get to this week, this is how many games I'll do, is a good thing. Annotating directly in the rules, because oftentimes I'll play a game and I'm like, oh, there was something at the beginning of the game that I forgot about, you know. So like all these steps seem obvious, but if you're going to, like you said, if you're going to do, what do you do, 62 games, like you have to have it streamlined. So it all makes sense. So how did you come, so with the write-ups, how did you come up with your format that you used? And everyone's like, because you had like very, you know, like your overview.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess really the rulebook section kind of came about because I often annotate while I'm reading the rules and kind of annotate where I was confused. And so that really helped, because then I could just kind of copy that directly into the rulebook section. And then I had an overview, which I basically did partially for myself, so I could go back to the post and kind of remind me, oh, this is what the game was about. This is what I thought about the game, or like kind of the genre. And then the gameplay section was my third section. And that was just like usually what I used for my suggestions. And I guess, yeah, I would say things about how like maybe the mechanics felt to play, and then maybe a way that the mechanics could be done differently. I always try to phrase it as a suggestion and not like a command, but I think sometimes, and maybe early on I did do a little bit too much of a critical tone. But
it's a tough thing on the internet, getting tone, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, yeah, I do find that I have to kind of be more conscious of that when doing the write-ups, because I usually do them like kind of quickly, and I just kind of do like the stream of consciousness. And then like I think sometimes it yeah, I will sometimes then, after I write out everything, try to go back and like make it less critical, or not less critical, but because I do, one thing I do want to do is make sure that like if I felt like there was this issue that like, I don't know, that I bring it up, and that like, I don't know, it comes across, because I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, everything's great, because then I think that's not as helpful. But I also don't want to be like mean about it. So yeah, especially since a lot of the times I give like feedback, and then like the feedback would have been something that I should have probably thought myself. So I can see how it may sometimes come across as hypocritical when I like say something about like a certain thing that I thought might be improved upon. But yeah.
Yeah. So how did you, so obviously towards the end of this thing, people like this seemed to be like us cheering you on, like we realized what was going on, but like how did you feel like it changed the way you gave feedback in the beginning towards the end? Like, people were just saying like, who's this guy who just wrote like, 10,000 words on my on my game?
Right.
I don't know. Did you notice a difference?
I guess, yeah, I pretty much stayed to the same format for the most part, and I didn't really change anything other than, I guess, like at the start, I wasn't planning on doing every game, so I was making like nicer prototypes and stuff like that, and then towards the end, like I kind of changed mindsets too. I'm not gonna like replay these games that much. I'm just gonna try and burst through as many as I can and hopefully get to all of them. And so
What made
that
you?
was,
What,
yeah.
I was just gonna. What made you make that change? What made you say? What was the moment like? I'm gonna try out and play all the games. Was it just you saw it was maybe attainable, or was it?
It was definitely that. And also, yeah, I thought it was going to be something I could probably do about like 20 games in. And I also, I think there is this perception, and there is some truth to it, that especially in like the design contests, like there, it's very possible for like for a game to get overlooked, and it definitely does happen for sure, where like there's a really hidden gem in there, and then like nobody plays it because for whatever reason it just didn't get
Right.
popular. And like I did encounter that a couple times, and then that kind of really motivated me to like, okay, I want to find like, make sure like I see all the games and at least try it once, maybe there's something underneath there. Like one thing I had to sacrifice there was playing multiple times. I really played every game like one time. So obviously I'm getting like a very first impressions kind of thing, and also not going very deep into the games, but at least I can kind of see the game and give it kind of like, that fair shake of, at least I played it. And then like, there were a lot of games there that I think really surprised me that, weren't getting that much attention and were really good. So being like, I guess that was a large part of what motivated me, was seeing like those kind of hidden gem games. And I think what ends up happening a lot in these contests is it's a small community and a lot of people know each other. So like if I see Uber Dante like play a game, I might play that game too. If that
Right.
makes sense. So I think
Yeah.
that is what's really happening. It's not like people are ignoring certain games. It's like, you see someone play a game and then that like motivates other people to play the game. So
But at the same time, like you also see very often, like a new designer wins the contest. So like,
exactly.
yeah.
Mhm. And that
So
can be because of like the designers who play that new game, write up about it, and then that
influence
encourages
it.
other
Yeah.
people. So it's not necessarily the games that the designers designed, but
Right.
maybe the games that they played that can have a big influence.
Right.
At least that was my perception of what ends up happening. Is sometimes you get like a glut of feedback, and that usually happens because someone played it and then that got other people to play it.
So yeah. So that's another. Are there any other like general things you got out of playing all the games in the contest? Like any other point of views that I wouldn't see from not having played all 62 games? Like that's an interesting thing I wouldn't have noticed necessarily.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, nothing really, but I guess maybe there were a lot more like dungeon crawling and role playing games than I thought. Like there were some themes that were like really popular. So I felt like there were a lot of dungeon crawling and a lot of role playing kind of esque games in the contest. And a lot of like video game not adaptions, but like inspired games.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a lot of people, I guess, coming from, a lot of first time designers are coming from like maybe video games is maybe what's happening. And so then they like their first design is going to incorporate a lot of like video game elements. Um, so that's maybe a theory I had to explain why people really liked the dungeon crawling and the role-playing game kind of style. But I
Mhm.
don't know, maybe it's something else. And I guess also like I think it's also kind of what I found is it's a motivation problem when it comes to playing games and not necessarily always a time problem. Like I think especially towards the end of the games I was trying to play, like I slowed down considerably. I think a lot of that was just like um maybe some motivation. Like I just needed some more motivation and then I could like kind of power through. And but if you have the motivation, um it's really not too bad and it's a lot of fun actually to play the game. So I think just like kind of committing and saying, okay, I'm gonna, play this game and then actually following through um is like at the end, like I was really glad I did that. Almost always, actually always. I don't think I ever regretted playing a game because even if it like I didn't like it, I still felt like I got something out of it because I got to see like what didn't work. How
Yeah,
you
can you take us through like an example of like maybe one game that you don't have to necessarily say specifics, but like that you were looked at and you're like, man, this is really not my type of game, but like because of this little project, like it gave some cool insight on the other side of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there was one submission that tried to make like this AI that learned how to fight the player over time.
I remember
And
seeing that. Yeah.
I thought well, it was I think it was like called Sniper Bot or something. And it was like a really cool idea. And I think if it had like some more work, it could go somewhere. And the reason I didn't like it was just that I basically felt like the AI learned, but it wasn't fast enough to counter what your strategy was. And it was also very transparent. So I felt like there were some like design problems that needed to be solved. Like, okay, maybe you could design it so that like or maybe this could be like a video game if you want like the AI to really learn how to like fight the player, or if it's just about like strategies and counter strategies, it could be um you could have it where um I don't know there would be like a really fast learning process. So if you did like strategy A, then maybe the AI like next turn is immediately like immune to strategy A or something. Or I don't know. But like yeah, that kind of went in a tangent or something. But
But no, that kind of showed that like even though the game didn't click with you, you obviously enjoy trying to think about how to improve a game, which
yeah,
so
exactly. Right.
so even the game itself. And that idea behind that game sounds to me like something that I couldn't develop in the time frame of this contest. Like thinking of AI that can
Yeah.
think that quickly. So was that another thing that you noticed playing the games, like the types of games that did well in the contest versus others, like in terms of like, I mean, the complex versus simple, or versus like the different mechanisms, or like just the ambitiousness of them, like that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what did well in the contest was probably the game. Like, there's also maybe a slight genre bias towards um well, I don't know, maybe not, because like the person who won Alchemist Apprentice was like this really creative off the wall thing. But I think anything Euro-y tends to get like attention, like resource management, and then stuff like duels or like combat games. I don't know. Yeah, maybe combat games maybe can get less attention. I think like worker placement and those Euro-y things maybe get more plays because they're more popular like styles, and people know like a Euro game if that's what they like, and I enjoy them a lot too. That like yeah, they want to play similar games to that, so they'll seek those out actively. And I think um yeah, there were some games where I think part of it was maybe, yeah, they are not the kind of game that most people would play, especially like those role-playing games that were submitted into the game. Um, and maybe some of the games that were like dungeon crawly, maybe didn't do as well because maybe people didn't seek them out as much. But it could be something else. And I don't think it's a very strong bias because any game can do well, I think. There is like the luck of, are people gonna like notice it and like play it and tell their friends about it, or not? And I think that is much higher than like any kind of bias of anything. And I certainly wouldn't design a game just because I think, you know, oh, it's gonna get more attention because it's like this mechanic, and this mechanic with this, theme is gonna like draw all the eyeballs. I think that is not what's really happening. And there's like a lot of other factors that and really just like, yeah, like I was saying before, I think actually probably the biggest factor is, can you get someone to like really latch onto the game? And then if someone like plays it, and then their friends are going to want to play it too.
Yeah, it's interesting because I take a personally when I do the contests, I almost like the opposite. Like I like to really engage with like a few games. So like, so it's interesting to hear like you give like it's interesting to see you pop in and give those one post, and then so like when someone asks questions about your feedback, how did you approach those? Because you're like, I have to move on. Like I can't go back and replay. Like how did that go for you? Because obviously when you write that much feedback, people were going to ask you questions about your feedback,
If it was just like a question of like what I meant, then I would definitely, reply to that. And also I did find that there were more than I would have liked cases where I got the rules wrong. So yeah, that was kind of that kind of sucked. But yeah, I guess if like I didn't actually go back and replay games if like even if I got the rules wrong or if like something like the game changed. So yeah, and that was partially like I just probably couldn't do that. Otherwise, it would take up time from being able to play other games. So yeah, that was a thing too, of like maybe I got some of the rules wrong and or the feedback like wasn't relevant. If the feedback like was just a question though, like, oh, what do you think about this? Or, some designers were like, what do you think if I added this mechanic in? Then I would be like happy to like, I don't know, give some thoughts on that.
Yeah. So for people who are giving feedback, which should be everyone in these contests, what are like your best practices now that you've given a ton of feedback? What's your best practice for giving feedback?
Yeah, I guess first of all, I would say one thing I definitely started doing, and I think is a good idea, is phrase it always as like an I think, or like have you considered this or something like that. Because I think that just like sounds better to like and more of like a suggestion. And also, yeah, because at the end of the day, I think the way I try to approach it is like, yeah, I have these suggestions, but they're just suggestions, and I don't care if they're implemented or not. Really, I think like it's just the way I thought of the game after like one play. So like at the end of the day, like compared to the designer, I really don't know anything because I haven't played it or gone as deep into the game as they have, obviously. But so that way, like kind of making it clear that these are more like impressions or suggestions and not really like, oh, you have to change this game because, it's terrible or something.
Right.
I guess, yeah. I think it is probably a thing where I think you do want to also on the other side of things not be too afraid to say what's not working. And it's always like a really delicate balance because you don't want to like be like, okay, this sucked, but I also always try to, even for a game that I thought was really good, I also try to, say, okay, well, how could it be better? And I think that is where like a lot of the value of the feedback comes in. Because, if you give feedback and you say like everything you liked about it, that's really helpful. And but it's also really helpful to kind of talk about where the improvements can be made. Because if you like, if you talk about everything you like, then like they're not going to change that because you liked it. So they're not going to change something that you liked. But maybe if you talked about like improvements that could be made, then that could be really valuable, because that could be like something actionable that they can do to improve their game. And they can always choose not to if they disagree, and that's totally fine. But by like kind of listing what didn't work, I think is also a good practice, because that is kind of the feedback that is helpful. And for me, when I got that feedback, that was really helpful for me too, to say, okay, this person, it didn't work for them here because, this was their experience. And I tried sometimes to give like what I would do as a designer, but I think sometimes the playtester's best job is to just identify the problems, and then the designer like kind of figures out how to fix it. I mean, yeah, I can give like a suggestion of how it might be fixed, but I think the designer usually would have like the better solution.
Right. Yeah, I have that problem myself. I usually throw like ideas of what I think could be, but again, in the same way of like, hey, take this or don't. I don't care. I mean, I do care that I want to see you work on your game some, but like,
Yeah.
I don't care if you take my idea. But
Right.
yeah. Well, I just realized how long we've been talking here. So is there any yeah, are there
Okay, I not really. This is just kind of, I did rank the games basically just for fun. I know ranking has like this connotation of like, I don't know, being judgmental, and I that's not the goal that I was going for. Um, but yeah, in general, I think at the end of the day, for all the design contests, you know, I don't think the winning of a contest is as important as maybe people think it is, or maybe that's just me. I think like what I've realized after playing, like doing a lot of contests, is it's really not about the awards as much as it is like the actual, feedback process, and like getting people to play your game. That's really like where all the value is. And then like it's definitely impressive to say, oh yeah, I won a contest or whatever, but yeah, it's not always where the value is. And so for like a ranking, like I know I don't see it as like, oh yeah, these games are like the best and these games you should never play, but just like kind of like a for fun thing. And I guess that could be like a good closing. Like, I think if you submitted a game into the contest, I think just doing that was like worthwhile. I mean, got a game out there into the world, and so now you like have that out there, and even just the design process of putting together something that you can like show other people, like it builds a lot of good skills. And for me personally, I think doing the design contests made me a much better designer, just from everything I learned from doing them.
yeah, I agree with a lot you said there. Like I mean, when my first contest, I thought like winning it was a much bigger deal than it was. And then it's like, and you realize that it is much more the experience of the contest. And yeah, I like the criteria breaking this down, which is why like when Ben released all the categories separately, and like I liked all the subcategories too, because like
That was awesome.
It's fun to like, if you like, I don't know, breaking it down in those ways is fun to see, find out which games you want to dive deeper into, because not all of us have played every single game. So it's so if I look at your list here, I'm like, oh no, I want a game that's just really, really fun. I don't even care if it's broken or whatever. Like, I just want a fun game. I could look at your criteria and see that. So I like breaking down things into categories like that. So I'm all about that. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I really liked how they Ben did that this year with the categories too. I think that was cool. Yeah, but that's all my slides basically. So we able to get through all of
We
them.
we know everything there is to know
Yeah.
about you now. Yeah, we've got through
Okay,
it
cool.
all.
Yeah. Yeah, this
So
has gone over a little bit. But
that's fine. Like, and this, like, again, this isn't going to be a YouTube channel with like 2,000 subscribers or whatever, where I need to make content quick and snappy. It's like,
right.
people can watch this in 15-minute chunks if they want.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
so last question though, would you do this again? Are you ever going to play all the games in the contest again?
Not right now, but maybe I'll see how I'm feeling next year. I will say I did get a little bit burnt out towards the end, if I'm being honest.
Of
And I
course.
kind of had to like kind of push myself over the finish line there, but yeah, I don't regret for sure the experience at all. I think it was really good to have that. And I really enjoyed playing all those different games.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I did once in my previous life. I did a music project where I had to write 50 songs in 50 weeks, and
Mhm.
like and I felt like it was probably about the same, because that's about the same number as you. And I feel like I got up into the high 30s, low 40s, and I was like, so there's like that 3/4 mark feels like, or the 2/3 mark maybe feels like where burnout comes in, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm trying to think if I missed any of my typical questions. Oh, is there anything in the BGG community that you would like to see more of or less of? It's something I like to ask anyone on this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess I think this is like a really obscure one, but
Great.
one thing that does help is if you make a page for your game, then like having votes, even if they're like a negative review, actually does kind of help, I think, because I think you can like actually get like a number on your game if you like get hit like 10 reviews or something. So I guess like don't be afraid to like rate games that you've played before. I don't know. But that's like a really minor thing. I don't know. I
Help,
really like,
help boost people up to 10. Okay.
right, yeah.
I see what you're getting at. Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. The board game geek community is awesome, actually. So I think it's a really great place. I think maybe actually another one would be integrating more with other communities, because there are some other game design communities out there. There's a lot on Discord, and I'm in a couple of Discords for it. And I always try to like nudge them towards the board game geek design contest, maybe. But yeah, I think there's other design communities out there too, and other like design contests out there that are not on Board Game Geek. But I think they could easily come to Board Game Geek because it's such a great place to like get feedback. So I don't know, maybe some sort of community integration among all the different pockets of designer groups out there.
So I am a pure BGG person. That's all I've done. So you want to shout out some of the other ones to check out and probably and hassle into integrating.
Yeah, I forget the name. There's a Discord channel called it's called Bored Out of Our Minds.
Right.
That is a really good one, actually. There's a lot of designers on there, and yeah, they do like a lot of designing and play testing of each other's games, and then just general design discussions. And then there's some other Discords too that I'm sure you could find. So then there's the Reddit. So the tabletop game design Reddit is really great, and you can follow that and stay up to date with stuff. And then there's a bunch of Facebook groups. There's Martin's Print and Play Hideaway, where a lot of designers are on there, and they share their print and play games on there. So there's a bunch that I would check out. So yeah, if you're looking for more groups to be a part of, yeah, I would check those out.
Yeah, more seems to be your thing. You like to do lots. I see. Cool. Well, was there any other closing thoughts you wanted to throw out there?
Nothing off the top of my head. So yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to see all this background info and put a face to the name that we see beyond the the comic face we see laughing at us.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for this series. I've enjoyed watching some of the other ones too. And yeah, it's great to have this. So yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I really enjoyed this talk too.
Great. Yeah, of course. Just real laid back and fun. And I hope people will sit through maybe in chunks this how long we go here, like two and a half. We'll see. Anyway, we'll see what people think about this. But
Right. Yeah.
all right, I'll see you around on the threads, my friend.
That's it. See you around.
All right, take care.